Welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I'm Richard Fields. Welcome to the show. On the show today, we have Lawrence Samuels, the author of In Defense of Chaos and the forthcoming, got a couple of books coming out, Government, A State of Deception, and The Phony Left-Right Dichotomy. Also, John Cameron, who has 2 books under his belt, Rekill, Rewire, a 3rd book coming, which is Aristocracy.
Coming in summer?
Coming this summer. Also, he's got on, go to Amazon, a couple of books on selling when you can't see the whites of their eyes, and what's the other one?
Selling when you can't see the whites of their eyes. It's audio, 4.5 hours of audio in a 400-page workbook, available either in physical form or as downloads.
And you got another one or 2 out there too, right?
Well, no, it's coming still.
Okay.
Tough Conversations Made Easy with Courtesy and Results. That should be out in summer as well.
Okay. Well, got a couple of people who've written a whole heck of a lot more than I have, so welcome to the show. Government, A State of Deception. It starts with, the first casualty of politics is truth. Why is that?
Well, when you study government as a system, get into system theory, you pretty well find out that government could not survive without being untruthful. It's just the way the system works. Anything you can, any subject you can look at, everything from Obamacare to what's happening out in Michigan with the Flint water, it's government agencies generally lying to the public. It's just what they do. They could not survive without it. So, that's what my book kind of talks about.
Give me some examples of what you're talking about. Let's take Obamacare for an example.
Okay, well, Obamacare, in fact, I had to stop my book for a while because this stuff was too good. He made a promise, massive consumer fraud, naturally, that you could keep your doctor, keep your plan. Well, my son lost his, both my sons lost their plan. And basically, almost everything that Obama and administration said was fraudulent, consumer fraud. But nobody goes after him, which is funny. I guess fraud is now legalized. But and we know that because Jonathan Gruber basically said that we couldn't get this passed unless we lied to the stupid taxpayers. From a tax to a penalty to a Cadillac everything. If you see the videos from Gruber, I mean, it's really incredible. So, just that alone. In Flint, Michigan, the reason the water is bad is because the government forgot to put chemicals into it. They
forgot or was trying to cut corners? What?
No, I think forgot. Plus, the trouble is Michigan's Department of Health came out and said, oh, we tested the water of pipes with lead in it, and we found no problems of lead. Well, a little while later, all of a sudden, they found out nobody knows who has lead pipes. So how can they know, how could they have tested ones with lead pipes? Because there's no record. Finally, they came back to the department and said, oh, we kind of lied about that.
So the whole thing was a fraud from the beginning?
It's fraud. It was a fraud from the beginning. Sure, they were trying to cut corners, but they had originally planned to do it because in that area, they have a lot of caustic water. If a city takes water out of this river, they put chemicals to prevent the lead from being leached out through the old lead pipes. Well, government screw up at many levels. But it's the fact that here's something that's so small, why would some departments just say, oh, the water's safe? I mean, it's a small issue in a sense. It's not like Obamacare, 1/6 of the economy. So they'll lie at the small, low level, and they'll do it at the upper level. It just doesn't matter where it is. They just can't seem to tell the truth.
Well, they didn't. You like quotes. Nietzsche said, everything the state says is a lie, and everything the state has, it is stolen.
Yes. In fact, that's what I have on this chapter. The quote, I have a couple of them like that. Nietzsche is one of them.
So is there ever time, well, let's look at, I can think of some examples. The whole, us getting into World War II, the surprise attack that they sort of knew was coming.
Well, I think Vietnam War would be better with the
Vietnam War is certainly
because those boats apparently never did attack the U.S. Destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. They pretty well determined that was not true.
Well, and then you look at that one of the Gulf Wars where we responded supposedly to information about weapons of mass destruction. And I think the leader at that time of Iraq actually did such a good job lying that his own generals thought he had nuclear weapons and chemical weapons at his disposal. So it was pretty easy for us to accept the lie that he was telling them, except for when they asked for it as Baghdad was getting ready to be invaded. They said, well, will you release the weapons to us so we can use them to defend the capital cities? They don't have any. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's not, it's, I can't think of an example. Probably the biggest example right now of the biggest lie being told, other than the fact they're not talking about $20 trillion in debt that's never going to be repaid, would be the whole global warming thing, which is the biggest scam and sham that has come along in a long time.
Well, if you look at complexity science and chaos theory, you know that weather and climate, they're a complex system. How can you determine in the future how things are going to be when you have hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of factors involved in a secondary, third, secondary level to make a prediction that it's going to be warmer or colder? You can't.
Well, you can make a prediction.
You can make a
Right.
prediction,
Well, no, you
but
can-
not necessarily
yeah. Well,
a right one.
What I'm saying is, but you know something about statistics, then you could certainly prove causation, prove that increases.
Or you can prove correlation, not necessarily
Well, no,
causation.
you can prove causation. Correlation and causation are two different things. You can prove categorically, statistically, that an increase in CO2 levels in the atmosphere hasn't caused.
No, it hasn't,
A
because
warning.
of the glacier samples coming back. Generally, it's the heat comes first, then the CO2.
Yeah.
What they found in the samples from
The
glaciers.
historical records from over the last
Going back
couple hundred thousand
thousands,
years.
yeah. I mean, the climate is warming, not very much. You know, you probably know the physicist Freeman Dyson. He said, yes, it's warming, but nothing to get alarmed about. It's normal for it to go up during glacial, interglacial periods. You know, it warms up. It goes. I mean, we had a medieval warming period where Greenland had trees and grass, and the Vikings loved it.
Vineyards.
Vineyards in northern, probably. I think in for a little
Southern
further south, but northern
Finland.
England had vineyards. So the weather was much warmer
Then you
during
have
the
the
middle.
Middle Ice Age.
Where the
During
river
our-
Thames froze and there were ice getting on the
Thames
river
froze.
Thames.
Oh yeah,
Froze-
yeah.
froze
It's just-
solid.
Yeah,
Just like the Danube froze solid a few years ago.
yeah. And you go back further in time. There was a program on NPR about Alexander and his armies and these cities he attacked near Afghanistan. And they found out that basically this whole area, the Caspian Sea and they're all connected because the ocean levels were higher and created a huge, massive area with wetlands, water, and rivers reaching all the way to Afghanistan. This is where they believe the Jason Argonaut's story came from. They couldn't figure out where he was going. They said he was going east. And they said, well, there isn't that much water east. Well, the
There
water
was.
level had gone up. And the commentator said back in that time, around Alexander the Great time, 2,500 years ago, 3,000 years ago, temperature was about 5% higher. Now, I don't know where you got that figure from, but you could see the water levels were way low compared to what it was before.
You quote Machiavelli as saying politics have no relation to morals and that morality stands in the way of effective governing. What does that say about the hope for good government if government is entirely divorced from morality?
Well, I'll tell you the first thing. Machiavelli is considered the father of political science. That tells you something right there. Here's someone that believed that ends justified the mean. You could lie, you could cheat, you could murder, you could assassinate, anything you want to
Is this
help.
Obama or Machiavelli?
Yeah, I know. For your cause, for your prince, or for your representative government or republic. They did have little republics in Italy at this time, but nothing was left off the table. It was going to get your noble cause done. You can do anything you wanted to, And you probably know that everybody from Hitler to Lenin to Stalin had his book at their nightstand. This is the book. In fact, Mussolini was going to do a thesis on Machiavelli. You can go online, you can find part of it. I don't think he ever completed it, but he did about 4 or 5 pages showing where he was going to go with Machiavelli, because he loved Machiavelli.
Well, Machiavelli also stated or inferred and implied that it's best to tell the truth most of the time. On small matters, always tell the truth. Gain a reputation for being a truth teller. That way, when you tell the big lie, people will actually believe it.
Well, that's the old one of the old. I think it's, I forget who said it, but little liars they put in jail, big ones they make leaders. There's I forget who it was.
So then our politicians, based upon that, what you just said, are bad because they lie about everything. They lie about small stuff as well.
Well, maybe not. Sometimes it's small stuff. I mean, there's certain universal truths that they're going to say the sky is blue, but then I go out and check. But yeah,
the politician told me I would go check.
But the incentives is not to tell the truth, because in a lot of cases people want their politicians to lie.
Well, you must be having a field day then with the current presidential race.
Oh, yeah, but I can't. I keep saying it to the editor, and I say, "Oh, stop! Don't do it anymore. I got a little bit more stuff." And then all of a sudden she stops, and then I send it back. Oh, wait, there's something even better. I mean, it's just perfect for what I'm doing. I mean, it's just little bits after. But you can only make the book so big.
What are your favorite lies from the current primary season?
Oh, the current primary? God, there's so many. A lot of these times you can't even tell. One client says, "You did vote this way." No, I didn't. You voted that way. I mean, it's like you voted for it before you voted against it. I mean, but some of that is not so much lies as the way how politics is. Some cases you'll vote for something not because you're for it, but because you're against it, because in it has poison pills, things that will make it not work. That's why laws don't work, because the politicians put things into them so they don't work, so the other party looks bad when things fall apart.
You mean they put a poison pill in on purpose?
On purpose, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course. And in fact, Cruz said he voted for some immigration bill, because they had put enough poison pills in it that it would never get passed in the Senate, or it would do poorly out in the public. And he was at least honest about that.
So he voted for it for appearance sake, but he knew that it was so bad and full of so much garbage that it would never pass.
Yes, it would never pass. Oh, yeah.
So he did it for PR.
Yeah.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah. And so he kind of got trapped in that a little bit. Why did you vote for something that said these horrible things? Well, I did it to basically so the bill wouldn't make it through the Senate or the Congress.
One of the tie winner, virtual tie winner in Iowa was Bernie Sanders, who was an avowed democratic socialist, self-described democratic socialist. And my question is really, during the 1930s, we had a phenomenon called National Socialism. You
Correct.
May remember its proponent. His first name was Adolf.
Yes.
What is the difference between democratic socialism and National Socialism?
Actually, not a lot. In fact, Stalin got mad at democratic socialists or social democrats in the 20s, and guess what he called them? He called them social fascists. There's a Wikipedia page on it. So he didn't like it because they didn't believe in a revolution. They didn't believe in going down to their capital and throwing bombs at the buildings and taking it over. The social democrats wanted to move towards Marxism gradually through elective process. And that's why Stalin just hated him. But again, Hitler, he won an election, basically. His party was the biggest party to win, I think up over 40% and one of the votes. And so he was very much like a social democrat. The Hitler himself, I just finished 6 months of intensive work on the chapter called German National Socialism and Marxism, because they're so tied close together. You can't understand fascism or National Socialism until you study Marx. Of course, you got to remember, Mussolini was a Marxist for quite a bit of his years. But no, it's very close. The early socialists, the utopian socialists, believed in community and all this, and believed in some nationalization of businesses. some regulations, but most of them did not. It was just, they wanted to stop usury, they wanted to stop free trade, other things like this. And Hitler basically is sort of a utopian type socialist. He did not want to nationalize everything, even though, if you study the scholars, Hitler nationalized 500 major companies. And some companies were actually government built or government created.
Well, but he did a lot of crony capitalist.
Yes, he did a lot
too.
of crony capitalism, and the people. There's a book out there called the Vampire Economy. Came out in 1939, and he talks about the businessmen that he knew. He was there in the underground in 33 and 34. Left near the end of 34. He was actually a communist, and but the businessmen were just being harmed. I mean, there were the National Socialists were forcing loans onto businessmen. Businessmen had to make loans to the government, even though most of them knew they would never get their money back. They were trying to redistribute wealth. The word is, one businessman says, all the radical Nazis talk about is redistributing wealth. In some cases, social justice.
So basically the Democratic plank right now pretty much mirrors the Nazis in the...
They're a big welfare state, huge public work projects like the Autobahn. I mean, on and on and on. High taxes. Horribly high taxes, and they had price and wage controls and had rationing. I got a little story from some little journal of the time.
Did they have a minimum wage though?
Yeah, by having price and wage controls, you have minimum wage.
By de facto.
And Mussolini in 1919, that was one of his platforms, minimum wage. This is all, all connected. Mussolini, he was friends with, Lenin and Trotsky, met him in Switzerland. In 1934, he was boasting about how 3/4 of the industry of Italy is now in states' hands. More than any country in the world except Russia. He had treaties with Russia, huge treaties, trading with Russia. He liked Stalin, he liked Lenin. If Italy had been closer to Russia, he'd have probably been on the Russian side instead of on the German side.
And the thesis of your book, State of Deception, Government, a State of Deception.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that you are postulating that the natural state of the way people want to interact with each other is voluntarily, as opposed to being told by the government what to do.
That's right, and that's
and
what.
So the only way government can succeed is tell the people what they want to hear while they're doing something entirely different.
Yes, quite often. I mean, they'll say things are going well on the Eastern Front, and they're not.
You're winning on the Eastern Front.
Yes, we're doing fine. Of course, we just lost Poland, but we're doing fine on the Eastern Front.
Who wants Poland?
Who wants Poland? But no, I mean, that was actually part of the problem of the National Socialists losing the war. They were not telling Hitler what was going on, what really going on. You shoot the messenger, they would. And so he's down in his bunker, and he's trying to micromanage the war, and he doesn't have the correct information because everybody's lying to him.
Because if they tell him the truth, he'll shoot them.
Yeah, or demoted or shoot him, put in concentration camps. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just, if you don't have truth or information, even if it's bad, how can you change things?
Yeah.
You can't.
Well, your second book, which I understand is an offshoot of the,
yes,
of the first
it's an
book,
offshoot.
because you just didn't have enough room to put it all in one book.
Yeah, it was getting too big and veering off. One, I just want to talk about politics and system theory and deception. And the other one, I want to talk about the political spectrum, how kind of screwed up it is.
Well, we have a left-right political spectrum. That's
right.
What you learn in social studies in junior high school.
Yeah.
What is wrong with that?
Now, what's wrong with this, they don't tell you who's on the left, and they don't tell you who's on the right. Back in 1791, who sat on the left, who sat on the right? On the right was the church and the monarchy. On the other side were the capitalists, merchants, the artisans, Jewish bankers, you name it. They believed in liberty, individual liberty.
So it's really authoritarian versus.
That's right, authoritarian versus libertarian. Well, all of a sudden you start looking at this and say, wait, who's authoritarian? Well, the Soviet Union was authoritarian. They should be on the right. No one says. They say they're on the left. Well, how can it be on when they're so close to each other? I mean, the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany were both anti-capitalist. They hated the Jews. They they hated the church. I mean, I got a quote today from Hitler saying, "I'm a heathen to the core," and I got a good footnote on it, something back in the 40s. There was almost no difference except for the fact that Hitler did not want to nationalize everything like Lenin had. And he knew that he couldn't do it. He wanted to get back at England and France for what happened in World War I. He couldn't do it without an army. If he nationalized his industry would be kaput, because that's what happened in Lenin when he nationalized everything in 1919, 1918. Industrialization went down. I mean, they couldn't get any raw materials. Most of the workers went out to the countryside so they wouldn't starve. They aren't producing anything.
So why is that lesson, which is repeated in history over and over and over again, that when government runs something, it runs it into the ground? What is that famous Reagan quote? He said, the public is fearful when they hear this. I'm with the government, and I'm here to help.
Oh, yes.
And in every single case throughout history, any government-run program has been inefficient, ineffective, has failed many times, and private industry could have done the job for a tenth the cost and half the time, over and over and over again. So why is that lesson not
They don't learn,
learned?
but Lenin did.
I think maybe the answer to that is that occasionally there's a success. You know, arguably the interstate highway system under Eisenhower was they successfully got the interstate highways built. They probably could have done it cheaper in the private sector, but it got done, and people say, well, that's successful. You know, if the government doesn't build the roads, who's going to? That is the question that's always.
Well,
Just about anybody.
They do learn the lesson. The Social Democrats came out of the Marxism, and when they got elected, they found out that they try to nationalize businesses and do all the stuff, protectionism, that their economy goes down, then they lose votes.
Okay, so is that the lesson that was learned in Scandinavia?
That's the lesson a lot of them have learned. Yes, you cannot go Marxist if you want to stay in power, if you're a Democrat. If you believe in democratic process, because you're going to get voted out. It's like what happened in Venezuela. They got voted out. Well, most of the legislators did. The president is not up for another, 2019 or something, but they may kick him out by referendum. But yes, and so they learn. And so this is what made Stalin so upset that they weren't going hardcore Marxist, because if they had done it, they'd have lost.
In Germany?
No, well, anywhere in Europe.
Anywhere the
Social Democrats were controlling Germany for a while. Before Hitler.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, the Social Democrats controlled Sweden and Norway for a very long time until they finally freed their markets.
They freed the markets, and there's a lot of private ownership, 70, 80, 90% private ownership in these countries that we call, socialist.
So in other words, they're mixed farther toward the capitalists.
Yes, they are, because they couldn't survive.
Than Bernie would have us believe.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. What is the real dichotomy? What is the real political spectrum?
What it is on the left is the libertarians and the voluntarists, even anarchists, individualist anarchists, market anarchists, all these people. On the right, you've got communism, Marxism, socialism, you name it. Anything authoritarian, Italian fascism, Pol Pot, you name it. Anything authoritarian. It is on the right. It's reactionary. It doesn't believe in liberty. Doesn't believe in openness, tolerance, the whole thing. So I go along with Jeff Rickenbach that had an article on this, why he's a left libertarian. We need to go back to the original French Assembly definition of left and right.
Which was?
Is that the people who believed in liberty are on the left. People who believed in authoritarianism is on the right.
Okay, well, I think actually the people in right now claim that mantle. On the left, they claim the mantle of on the civil liberties side, which
Some do,
what-
some don't.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
don't go to a
Obama's
college
not been
campus
too good at that.
and talk about freedom of speech.
Well, no, I mean, but you know, the abortion / right to life issue is presented as a civil liberties issue. That's
Yeah,
what's
but you
presented.
have the left going about hate speech on campus. You can get
Yeah.
thrown off if you say something you don't like.
Well, I'm not saying it's right. What I'm saying is that they assume that mantle, and they sell. You said, you know, basically everything that government does and says is a lie. They assume the mantle of civil liberties and protecting individual freedoms, while they take away economic freedom, which is the core freedom that we need to have, individual freedom.
Reminds me what Carl Hess said. He said the so-called left preaches individualism but practices collectivism.
Yeah. Where does, I mean, we know where the libertarian philosophy and party and so forth fits onto the on
Well,
the
a
spectrum.
lot of them believe at the top.
What about the Greens?
The Greens, no, I've dealt with a lot of Greens before. There would be classified as right-wing, authoritarian. They do talk about decentralization, but they support government mandated health care. So I don't, you know, the decentralization is really kind of strange, but they would be on the right, and you know, they're fairly socialist, and sometimes they think they're a pacifist. I remember one came up to me and declared, you know, with a big smile, "I'm a pacifist now." I said, "Well, that's great. You know, I know a number of libertarians were pacifists." I said, "But the question is, what do you do with people who don't want to pay their taxes? Are you going to put them in jail and they resist? Will you shoot them?" He just sat there and looked at me. "Oh, I got to get back at that and that." 6 months later, he comes up to me and says, "You know about that pacifism?" I said, "Yeah, I'm no longer a pacifist." That was he ran for, I think, Congress, and he was kind of a nice guy. That was fine. But I know some of them are semi-Marxist. I had a big...
Well, I always got the idea that most Greens, not all of them, but a lot of them are watermelons. They're, you know, green on the outside, red on the inside.
I'll give an example. I belong to the Peace Coalition in Monterey County. I'm the treasurer of it now. And we had a lady in there from the Green Party, and she didn't want this libertarian speaker, Anthony Gregory, to speak there, get endorsement from the Peace Coalition, you know, our co-sponsor. And I said, well, to her, what happened if we disagree with somebody you bring in? Well, like who? Well, like a Marxist. And she says, well, what's wrong with that? You know, only killed 100 million people, their descendants in the 20th century. So afterwards, I talked to her, and I say, you know, Marx hated Jews, hated blacks. Engels was in genocide. She said, oh, I just take the good parts of Marxism.
That's the show. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place. On the Libertarian Counterpoint, www.accesssacramento.org on the internet, live streams, 8 p.m. Thursday, noon Friday, 4 a.m. Saturday, and on cable channels all over the place, Channel 17 in Sacramento, and on YouTube. Thank you very much for being part of the show. See you again next week.